There was a time when they called us colored, a word conveying imagery of Crayola and creativity, innocence and beauty. It was meant to mean anything but. They meant colored as in different, colored as in dirty, colored as in unworthy of the same treatment as those with less melanin. Colored. No longer politically correct. As a race, we've outgrown this label, but ask any little brown girl about colors and she'll proudly produce her big box of 64 crayons, papers depicting pastel-petaled flowers and cerulean skies, chartreuse trees, and multicolored rainbows. Rainbows. A cluster of all the colors, the result of rain and refraction, Mother Nature's sincerest apology for the storm. And for the LGBTQ community, rainbows are meant to represent pride. It's a shame that gays these days have to explain why they want the most basic rights. A story that sounds all too familiar, simply a different chapter in the same big book of bullshit. How ironic is it that this time we coloreds are helping to reinstate Jim Crow-like laws, but this time with a gay clause. It's true that gays were never denied a front seat on public transportation, never had to endure adversity due to simply their pigmentation, but prejudice doesn't have a particular face. Both groups are all too familiar with 6-letter slurs and the fact that mom lied when she said that words wouldn't hurt. Solidarity is bred from subjugation. Pick a common enemy and suddenly we're linking arms with the man following his plan of persecution. The bullied have become the bullies, the oppressed have joined the ranks of the oppressors because no one wants to be the bottom rung on America's ladder. And if they're brought up to our level, eventually will be surpassed and once again be last. If they're too busy focusing on the gays, maybe they'll forget about us. Here's a tip. They will never forget about us. Multiple minority groups can be marginalized simultaneously. The focus never shifts, the scale never dips in our favor. This is no zero-sum game. Their loss is not our gain. The cosmos have not established a set amount of bigotry allowed to exist in the world at any given point in time. Huey P. Newton felt we were in competition with our compatriots, a pity party to pick apart who America screwed harder. So rather than potential allies, instead we see enemies. And rather than being open-minded, instead we just pretend to be. Underprivileged blacks and whites once shared a similar plight, but then they got their rights and said, you're on your own. You see, class is a fluid system. Hard work and luck will allow you to climb the ranks, but for most, race is set in stone. So then you get attitudes like, but I can't cover my complexion. They can keep their homosexuality hidden, but in reality, why should their feelings be treated as something that's forbidden? Our Constitution creates a separation between church and state, so I'd say the bedroom is no place for church-based opinions. Some use religion as a crutch. They'll find a way to contradict and circumvent the commandments when it's convenient, but for your own moral standards, you're far more lenient. Some say the point of marriage is procreation, something that those couples simply can't do, but from what I can see, y'all seem to be reproducing just fine without a ring, which makes that whole thing an argument against gay marriage I never quite understood. If that's the case, we should also ban the elderly, the sterile, and those simply uninterested in parenthood. MLK said it best. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. But we only allow this quote to apply when we're the ones to benefit. Sift through history for what uplifts us, but ignore the rest just for the hell of it. By no means am I attempting to put the two struggles on the same level, but don't deny that they're different degrees along the same axis, 2 points sitting on the same scale or spectrum. Speaking of spectrums, we all learned in 7th grade science of the continuum of colors known as visible light. The sequence progressing from rose to purple, the root of all rainbows. Society's pure white light encourages colored rays to stay locked up tight, but prisms in the form of parental approval can help release those rainbows from imprisonment. You make gay jokes in front of your kids, and in the same breath you say, you know you can tell me anything, right? You know I'd love you no matter what, right? But sometimes these half-truths seem like whole lies in disguise when your thoughtless actions have already proven to have otherwise. Unabated self-hatred and low self-esteem resulting from no self-acceptance leads to self-lynchings. Bodies hanging limp among the shirts, neatly organized from dead to violent, from red to violet because you wouldn't let him come out of the closet. Even after years of education, no homo and pause still litter your lexicon like they're forms of punctuation. Between your periods of prejudice and commas of contempt, you're granting your children life sentences in the form of run-ons, which you refuse to put a stop to. Your own sons are afraid to be faggots in your eyes, so they move earth and sky to gain your affection, to get a step closer to what you consider perfection, thinking they're defective because watching women pass by never led to anorection, but living this lie will avoid your rejection, but in the process they lose themselves. We end up with men who can't express emotion, but when he was a kid, you wouldn't even let him cry. Man the fuck up, but he's just a boy. Boys play with trucks, motherfucker. It's just a toy. We want our men to be good fathers, but won't let them play with dolls. Made him aware of his manhood before he could even crawl. We see having a homosexual child as proof of parental failure, and irrationality you invented is something that should have been prevented because selfishly you're more concerned with what it reflects and what others would say if people found out the child you raised turned out to be gay. If they all found out you failed to pray the gay away. The weather has changed only slightly since the time when they called us colored. Our judgment cloudy, we think the complexities of complexion should trump the troubles of rejection from society, from family, from self. You see, both groups are the abandoned children of the deadbeat nation which produced us yet cannot provide. The bastard babies left to fend for ourselves, umbrella free, because somehow glass ceilings don't keep you dry. Against a cold front, homeless brown bodies huddle beneath an underpass, which we've turned into an exclusive club. Only blacks, no gays, I'll turn my back till you end that phase. The ostracism stings like lightning and the silence resonates like thunder. We've withstood the environmental pressure for so long we've begun to mistake the darkness for light. We leave our own exposed to the elements, wind whipped on the outskirts of acceptance, bearing the heaviness of the humidity we've escaped. Mother Nature streaks a watercolor painting across the sky that hangs like stained glass, allowing newfound sunlight to pass her heartfelt apology for the storm, begging for forgiveness in the form of photons. We have somehow found solace from the storm, a shelter big enough for two, so long as we're willing to make room.